Ontario NDP Leader Andrea Horwath joins NetNewsLedger to talk about the issues of the day. It's James with NetNewsLedger. Joining us by Zoom is Andrea Horwath, the leader of the Ontario New Democratic Party. Andrea, welcome and thank you for taking the time on NetNewsLedger.
Always my pleasure, James. Nice to see you.
We have a crisis happening in Thunder Bay. Earlier today, Judith Monteith-Farrell and yourself are pushing for help for our city. We've got 307 active cases of COVID. We've been getting 30 to 40 a day for a week. What are you pushing the government to do for us?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's shocking that the government is not responding to the desperate requests for more isolation units, for more help for the public health unit with contact tracing and testing. So some of those basics need to be there. But look, this government promised that they had an emergency brake. They called it an emergency brake, ready to go if these very kinds of situations started to occur. And yet today we heard, or yesterday from the health minister, that it's going to take, a couple of cabinet meetings, a couple of studies in terms of the data, and then, who knows what else in terms of lengthy process before they consider something like an emergency brake being put into play in Thunder Bay. And in the meantime, COVID-19 continues to spread. People's lives continue to be at risk, and that's just not fair to the people of Thunder Bay. I mean, your health units and your communities in the north and the northwest have long been under-serviced when it comes to healthcare dollars. I mean, you guys, COVID-19 hit, and in the north, you are already at a disadvantage because of not having, the level of healthcare resources that you deserve. And so now with COVID, seeing the way this government is dragging its feet and not responding is really, really scary. And look, I know that it's hard. I know how hard it is for people to go into lockdown, for small businesses, but we actually could be supporting those small businesses. We've been trying to get the government to support small businesses, help them pay the rent, help them make sure that they can survive through the lockdown so that they can, come out of COVID-19 and still serve our communities and create economic activity at the local level. But Doug Ford just doesn't want to spend the money. And as a result, we're in a crisis.
Now, one of the issues that I found honestly very surprising is I asked the Premier's office on Monday, our numbers are surging. We are literally, the Thunder Bay District Health Unit is now getting more cases per 100,000 than Toronto, York, and Peel. Can you put the brakes on? And they told me, it's in the press release. And they sent the press release back to me saying that it takes 2 COVID cycles of 14 days or 28 days to make a change. Now, today, they're talking that maybe by Friday, we're going to do something. But we've been in those gray lockdown numbers for almost a week.
Yeah, I mean, and it's unacceptable. I mean, it's absolutely horrifying that the government was not being honest about an emergency brake. There's no difference in how they're dealing with this situation than how they've dealt with things from day one. There's no urgency whatsoever. And in the meantime, the community's going over a cliff when it comes to the COVID-19 numbers. So, this emergency brake idea was just a talking point, and the government needs to step up, and they shouldn't have to, you as a community shouldn't have to wait until there's more spread, there's more, more anxiety, there's more likelihood of death. That's just not fair to the people of Thunder Bay. And it's not fair to all of those frontline healthcare workers and folks in public health and others who are working so hard to try to protect your community.
Now, one of the issues that we're seeing, earlier today, Nestandiga in the north has declared a state of emergency for their off-reserve people here in Thunder Bay. What we're hearing on the grassroots level is that there's not really any funding available for off-reserve Indigenous people, except through organizations. And some of the organizations, we know they're trying hard, but they don't seem to be getting the stuff out to the people as quickly as they can.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's been a long haul, right? And so some of those organizations might just be at the end of their capacity. But at the end of the day, it's the responsibility of the provincial and federal governments to protect the health of First Nations residents, whether they're on the reserve or whether they're in another community because of other problems like boiled water issues or lack of clean drinking water. And so to hear that, notwithstanding the language that gets used by the federal government and the provincial government around First Nations folks being a priority, obviously they haven't been. And so this needs to be addressed, and the government needs to be there to provide the backstop, to provide the protections and the services and the vaccines, frankly, that community members deserve.
Now, one of the issues that we've been working on almost for a year is we've been trying to get answers for some of our readers and viewers on First Nation land claim issues. And we finally got through the minister's office to say, okay, we'll get you some answers on this. The answer came back to be people have to ask the chief in their community. Now, the whole process a year ago started because people were reaching out to us because they weren't getting the answers from the chief because he didn't have the answers from the province. And it just seems to be a one-year merry-go-round. And of course, when people don't get government's answers, it takes government and makes it discreditable to them.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. And what's the secret? I mean, why all the secrecy? The government should be straight up front about these land claim issues, and that way provide the opportunity for people to do the advocacy necessary to start moving some of these things forward. But we've long seen, James, the political football that gets played between the provincial government and the federal government on land claims and other issues. It's really horrifying to watch, to now see a further ping pong ball being tossed back and forth. And I wouldn't say necessarily that the chiefs are complicit in this, but certainly shame on the provincial government to suggest that somehow it's up to the chiefs to tell the community what the provincial government's position is. That's absolutely unacceptable. And they, people have a right to know, and the media has a right to dig for those questions and get the proper answers, and not be sent on a wild goose chase to get some kind of secondhand information that the government should be providing straight up. And you're absolutely right. When the government, tries to hide the information or is refusing to provide it, it creates a whole bunch of distrust and a whole bunch of questions around the, around that government's honesty and their integrity.
Now, shifting gears a little bit, one of the issues that we've had crossing our desk for months and months now, through last year when the first lockdown happened, is people in the north getting around. Intercommunity bus service being hit hard. And it's not only being hit hard in Western and Northern Ontario, but it's being hit hard right across the country. And we have an opportunity perhaps here for some change. Maybe it's time for the province to say, okay, we can't handle this issue, and we get 9 provinces out of the way and let the federal government come in. Where would the NDP go on that?
Well, I mean, it's very interesting because we all know that the Trans-Canada rail kind of lines are what knitted our country together in the first place, right? The railway, Canadian National Railway System, is what helped us to form a nation, such as it was in terms of the exploitation that occurred on the way of the Indigenous residents that already owned the land and lived off of the land. But having said that, the necessity for transportation to be always to be available reliably, available reliably is significant in a country our size. And particularly in places, I mean, you're right, around the province, it's a problem. Around the country, it's a problem because, the transit systems have been either significantly reduced, as you say, for a while, have not operated during some of the lockdowns in some jurisdictions. And so in places like the north, though, those services, if you will, were already on a lifeline. Right. And when we know that in Northern Ontario, not only is it the interregional stuff, but, people have to sometimes go to other jurisdictions completely for things like healthcare and other services. And so, it's something that I think is possible to look at. But I would say this: we haven't been, I think, well served by the federal government, and I'm not talking about this particular federal government, but successive federal governments nickeling and diming the provinces on other files. And so whether that's Canada Health transfers, for example, it used to be a Canada Health and Social Services transfer, and I don't want to get into the weeds, but the federal government, squeezes the provinces when they get the opportunity, and that just erodes the capacity of the provinces to provide reliable service. And so, I don't have a problem with the idea that the federal government should be in some way supportive, but I worry because the federal government has shown that it doesn't always live up to its obligations when it comes to funding some of the services that are already supposed to be funded federally.
And thank you. And Andrea, I think we'll leave it there. I want to thank you for the time today and for the interview.
It's always my pleasure, James. Nice to see you.
To keep up to date, you have to subscribe. You have to hit that like button and hit the notification to stay in touch.